Tyrion. As he stood in the pre-dawn chill, watching 𝘠𝘰𝘠𝘕 butcher his horse, Tyrion Lannister chalked up one more debt owed the Starks. Steam rose from the inside the carcass when the squat sellsword opened the belly with his skinning knife. His hands moved deftly with never a wasted cut. The work had to be done quickly before the stink of blood brought shadow cats down from the heights. "None of us will go hungry tonight," Bronn said. He was near a shadow himself, bone-thin and bone-hard, with black eyes and black hair and a stubble of beard. "Some of us may," Tyrion told him. "I am not fond of eating horse, particularly my horse." "Meat is meat," Bronn said with a shrug. The Dothraki like horse more than beef or pork." "Do you take me for a Dothraki?" Tyrion asked sourly. The Dothraki ate horse, in truth. They also left deformed children out for the feral dogs who ran behind their 𝘕𝘼𝑲𝑎𝑟s. Dothraki customs had scant appeal for him. 𝘠𝘰𝘠𝘕 sliced a thin strip of bloody meat off the carcass and held it up for inspection. "Want a taste, dwarf?" "My brother Jaime gave me that mare for my 23rd name day," Tyrion said in a flat voice. "Thank him for us again, then, if you ever see him again." 𝘠𝘰𝘠𝘕 grinned, showing yellow teeth, and swallowed the raw meat in 2 bites. "Tastes well bread. Better if you fry it up with onions," Bronn put in. Wordlessly, Tyrion limped away. The cold had settled deep in his bones, and his legs were so sore he could scarcely walk. Perhaps his dead mare was the lucky one. He had hours more riding ahead of him, followed by a few mouthfuls of food and a short, cold sleep on hard ground. And then another night of the same, and another, and the gods only knew how it would end. "Damn her," he muttered as he struggled up the road to rejoin his captors, remembering, "Damn her and all the Starks." The memory was still bitter. One moment he'd been ordering supper, and an eye blink later he was facing a room of armed men, with Jack reaching for a sword and the fat innkeep shrinking. "No words! No swords, not here, please, my lords." Tyrion wrenched down Jack's arm hurriedly before he got them both hacked to pieces. "What are your courtesies, Jack? Our good hostess said no swords. Do as she asks." He forced a smile that must have looked as queasy as it felt. "You're making a sad mistake, Lord Stark. I had no part in any attack on your son. On my honor." "Lannister honor," was all she said, She held up her hands for all the room to see. "His dagger left these scars. The blade he sent to my son to open his throat." Tyrion felt the anger all around him, thick and smoky, fed by the deep cuts in the Stark woman's hands. "Kill him," hissed some drunken slattern from the back, and other voices took up the call faster than he would have believed. Strangers all, friendly enough only a moment ago, and yet now they cried for his blood like hounds on a trail. Tyrion spoke up loudly, trying to keep the 𝘠𝘁𝘓 from his voice. "If Lady Stark believes I have some crime to answer for, I will go with her and answer for it." It was the only possible course. Trying to cut their way out of this was a sure invitation to an early grave. A good dozen swords had responded to the Stark woman's plea for help. The Harrenhal man, the 3 Brackens, a pair of unsavory sellswords who looked as though they'd kill him as soon as spit, and some fool field hands who doubtless had no idea what they were doing. Against that, what did Tyrion have? A dagger at his belt and 2 men. Jack swung a fair enough sword, but Morrick scarcely counted. He was part groom, part cook, part body servant, and no soldier. As for Yoren, whatever his feelings might have been, the Black Brothers were sworn to take no part in the quarrels of the realm. Yoren would do nothing. And indeed, the Black Brothers stepped aside silently with the old knight by Catelyn Stark's side and said, "Take their weapons." The sellsword Brune stepped forward to pull the swords from Jack's fingers and relieve them all of their daggers. "Good," the old man said as the tension in the common room ebbed palpably. "Excellent." Tyrion recognized the gruff voice. Winterfell's master-at-arms, shorn of his whiskers. Scarlet-tinged spittle flew from the fat innkeep's mouth as she begged of Catelyn Stark. "Don't kill him here!" "Don't kill him anywhere," Tyrion urged. "Take him somewhere else. No blood here, milady. I want no high lording's quarrels." "We are taking him back to Winterfell," she said, and Tyrion thought, well, perhaps. By then, he'd had a moment to glance over the room and get a better idea of the situation. He was not altogether displeased by what he saw. Oh, the Stark woman had been clever, no doubt of it. Forced them to make a public affirmation of the oaths sworn her father by the lords they served, and then call on them for succor. And her a woman, yes, that was sweet. Yet her success was not as complete as she thought. There were close to 50 in the common room by his rough count. Catelyn Stark's plea had roused a bare dozen. The others looked confused, or frightened, or sullen. Only 2 of the Freys had stirred, Tyrion noted, and they'd sat back down quick enough when their captain failed to move. He might have smiled if he dared. "Winterfell it is, then," he said. That was a long ride, as he could well attest, having just ridden it the other way. So many others could happen along the way. My father will wonder what has become of me, he added, catching the eye of the swordsman who'd offered to yield up his room. He'll pay handsomely to any man who brings him word of what happened here today. Lord Tywin would do no such thing, of course, but Tyrion would make up for it if he won free. Sir Roderick glanced at his lady, his look worried, as well it might be. His own men come with him, the old knight announced, and we'll think the rest of you to stay quiet about what you've seen here. It was all Tyrion could do not to laugh. Quiet, the old fool. Unless he took the whole in, the word would begin to spread the instant they were gone. The free rider with the coin in his pocket would fly to Casterly Rock like an arrow. If not him, then someone else. Yoren would carry the story south. The fool singer might make a lay of it. The Freys would report back to their lord, and the gods only knew what he might do. Lord Walder Frey might be sworn to River Run, but he was a cautious man who had lived a long time by making certain he was always on the winning side. At the very least, he would send his birds winging south to King's Landing, as he might well dare more than that. Catelyn Stark wasted no time. We must ride at once. We'll want fresh mounts and provisions for the road. You men, know that you have the eternal gratitude of House Stark. If any of you choose to help us guard our captives and get them safe to Winterfell, I promise you shall be well rewarded. That was all it took. The fools came rushing forward. Tyrion studied their faces. They would indeed be well rewarded, he vowed to himself, but perhaps not quite as they imagined. Yet even as they were bundling him outside, saddling the horses in the rain, and tying his hands with a length of coarse rope, Tyrion Lannister was not truly afraid. They would never get him to Winterfell. He would have given odds on that. Riders would be after them within the day. Birds would take wing, and surely one of the river lords would want to curry favor with his father enough to take a hand. Tyrion was congratulating himself on his subtlety when someone pulled a hood down over his eyes and lifted him onto a saddle. They set out through the rain at a hard gallop, and before long, Tyrion's thighs were cramped and aching, and his butt throbbed with pain. Even when they were safely away from the inn, and Catelyn Stark slowed them to a trot, it was a miserable, pounding journey over rough ground, made worse by his blindness. Every twist and turn put him in danger of falling off his horse. The hood muffled sound, so he could not make out what was being said around him, and the rain soaked through the cloth and made it cling to his face. Even breathing was a struggle. The rope chafed his wrists raw, and seemed to grow tighter as the night wore on. I was about to settle down to a warm fire and a roast fowl, and that wretched singer had to open his mouth. He thought mournfully. The wretched singer had come along with them. There is a great song to be made from this, and I'm the one to make it, he told Catelyn Stark when he announced his intention of riding with them to see how the splendid adventure turned out. Tyrion wondered whether the boy would think the adventure quite so splendid once the Lannister riders caught up with them. The rain had finally stopped, and dawn lit and seeped through the wet cloth over his eyes when Catelyn Stark gave the command to dismount. Rough hands pulled him down from the horse, untied his wrists, and yanked the hood off his head. When he saw the narrow, stony road, the foothills rising high and wild all around them, and the jagged snow-capped peaks on the distant horizon, all the hope went out of him in a rush. "This is high ground," he gasped, looking at Lady Stark with accusation. "The eastern road. You said we were riding for Winterfell." Catelyn Stark favored him with the slightest of smiles. "Often and loudly," she agreed. "No doubt your friends will ride that way when they come after us. I wish them good speed." Even now, long days later, the memory filled him with a bitter rage. All his life, Tyrion had prided himself on his cunning, the only gift the gods had seen fit to give him. Yet this 7 times damned she-wolf, Catelyn Stark, had outwitted him at every turn. The knowledge was more galling than the bare fact of his abduction. They stopped only as long as it took to feed and water the horses, and then they were off again. This time, Tyrion was spared the hood. After the second night, they no longer bound his hands, and once they had gained the heights, they scarcely bothered to guard him at all. It seemed they did not fear his escape, and why should they? Up here the land was harsh and wild, and the high road little more than a stony track. If he did run, how far could he hope to go, alone and without provisions? The shadow cats would make a morsel of him, and the clans that dwelt in the mountain fastness were brigands and murderers who bowed to no law but the sword. Yet still, the Stark woman drove them forward relentlessly. He knew where they were bound. He had known it since the moment they pulled off his hood. These mountains were the domain of House Tyrion, and the late Hand's widow was a Tully, Catelyn Stark's sister, and no friend to the Lannisters. Tyrion had known the Lady Lysa slightly during her years at King's Landing, and did not look forward to renewing the acquaintance. His captors were clustered around a stream a short ways down the high road. The horses had drunk their fill of the icy cold water, and were grazing on chunks of brown grass that grew from clefts in the rock. Jack and Morik huddled close, sullen and miserable. Mohor stood over them, leaning on his spear and wearing a rounded iron cap that made him look as if he had a bowl on his head. Nearby, 𝘕𝘰𝘠𝘕, the singer, sat oiling his wood harp, complaining of what the damp was doing to his strings. "We should have rest, my lady," the hedge knight 𝘕𝘠𝘳𝘠𝘠𝘕 was saying to Catelyn Stark as Tyrion approached. He was Lady Whent's man, stiff-necked and stolid, and the first to rise to aid Catelyn Stark back at the inn. "Sir Wallace speaks truly, my lady," Sir Roderick said. "This is the third horse we have lost." "We will lose more than horses if we were overtaken by the Lannisters," she reminded them. Her face was windburnt and gaunt, but it had lost none of its determination. "Small chance of that here," Tyrion put in. "The lady did not ask your views, dwarf," snapped 𝘕𝘁𝘠𝘕𝘠, a great fat oaf with short cropped hair and a pig's face. He was one of the Brackens, a man-at-arms in the service of Lord Jonas. Tyrion had made a special effort to learn all their names, so he might thank them later for their tender treatment of him. A Lannister always paid his debts. 𝘕𝘁𝘠𝘕𝘠 would learn that someday, as would his friends 𝘕𝘋𝑝s and Mohor, and the good Sir Willis, and the sellsword Brune and Siegen. He planned an especially sharp lesson for 𝘕𝑚𝑒𝑟𝑗𝑠, him of the wood harp and the sweet tenor voice, who was struggling so manfully to rhyme imp with gimp and limp, so he could make a song of his outrage. "Let him speak," Lady Stark commanded. Tyrion Lannister seated himself on a rock. "By now our pursuit is likely racing through the neck, chasing your lie up the King's Road, assuming there is a pursuit, which is by no means certain. Oh, no doubt the word has reached my father, but my father does not love me overmuch, and I am not at all sure that he will bother to bestir himself." It was only a half-lie. Lord Tywin Lannister cared not a fig for his deformed son, but he tolerated no slights on the honor of the house. "This is a cruel land, Lady Stark. You'll find no succor until you reach the Vale, and each mount you lose burdens the others all the more. Worse, you risk losing me. I am small and not strong, and if I die, then what's the point?" That was no lie at all. Tyrion did not know how much longer he could endure this pace. "It might be said that your death is the point, Lannister," Catelyn Stark replied. "I think not," Tyrion said. "If you wanted me dead, you had only to say the word, and one of these staunch friends of yours would gladly have given me a red smile." He looked at 𝘕𝘁𝘠𝘕𝘠, but the man was too dim to taste the mockery. "The Starks do not murder men in their beds." "Nor do I," he said. "I tell you again, I had no part in the attempt to kill your son. The assassin was armed with your dagger. Tyrion felt the heat rise in him. It was not my dagger, he insisted. How many times must I swear to that? Lady Stark, whatever you may believe of me, I am not a stupid man. Only a fool would arm a common footpad with his own blade. Just for a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. But what she said was, "Why would Peter lie to me?" "Why does a bear shit in the woods?" he demanded. "Because it is his nature. Lying comes as easy as breathing to a man like Littlefinger. You ought to know that, you of all people." She took a step toward him, her face tight. "And what does that mean, Lannister?" Tyrion cocked his head. "Why, every man at court has heard him tell how he took your maidenhead, my lady." "That is a lie!" Catelyn Stark said. "Oh, wicked little imp," Marillon said, shocked. Croquette drew his dirk, a vicious piece of black iron. "At your word, my lady, I'll toss his lying tongue at your feet." His pig eyes were wet with excitement at the prospect. Catelyn Stark stared at Tyrion with a coldness on her face, such as he had never seen. "Peter Baelish loved me once. He was only a boy. His passion was a tragedy for all of us, but it was real and pure and nothing to be made mock of. He wanted my hand. That is the truth of the matter. You truly are an evil man, Lannister." "And you are truly a fool, Lady Stark. Littlefinger has never loved anyone but Littlefinger, and I promise you that it is not your hand that he boasts of. It's those ripe breasts of yours, that sweet mouth, the heat between your legs." Croquette grabbed a handful of hair and yanked his head back in a hard jerk, baring his throat. Tyrion felt the cold kiss of steel beneath his chin. "Shall I bleed him, my lady?" "Kill me, and the truth dies with me." Tyrion gasped. "Let him talk," Catelyn Stark commanded. Croquette let go of Tyrion's hair reluctantly. Tyrion took a deep breath. "How did Littlefinger tell you I came by this dagger of his? Answer me that." "You won it from him in a wager during the tyranny on Prince Joffrey's name day. When my brother Jaime was unhorsed by the Knight of Flowers. That was his story, no?" "It was," she admitted. A line creased her brow. "Riders!" The shriek came from the wind-carved ridge above them. Sir Roderick has sent Larys scrambling up the rock face to watch the road while they took their rest. For a long second, no one moved. Catelyn Stark was the first to react. "Sir Roderick! Sir Willis, the horse!" she shouted. "Get the other mounts behind us. Moher, guard the prisoners. Arm us!" Tyrion sprang to his feet and seized her by the arm. You will need every sword. She knew he was right. Tyrion could see that. The mountain clans cared nothing for the enemies of the great houses. They would slaughter Stark and Lannister with equal fervor as they slaughtered each other. They might spare Catelyn herself. She was still young enough to bear sons. Still, she hesitated. I hear them! Sir Roger called out. Tyrion turned his head to listen, and there it was. Hoofbeats, 12 horses or more, coming nearer. Suddenly, everyone was moving, reaching for weapons, running to their mounts. Pebbles rained down and around them as Loras came springing